Ugle-Hagan!
It is a draw.
It's on the ground, you favour Elliott. Oh, brilliantly thought out!
The streak to protect. Port Adelaide has pulled off a miracle.
Hello and welcome to Access All Areas, thanks to Crypto.com. Nat Edwards absent today. Matthew, Lloyd, Damian, Barrett with you. Lloydie, welcome.
Thanks, Damo.
We'll start with the almighty scare the Saints got in Perth yesterday. West Coast pushed them for most of the game.
And you see the crowd there, how ecstatic the crowd was, Damo, at quarter time. Like, they get a standing ovation here, the West Coast Eagles players, because I think they're just pleased to be in a game. They have not been in a game and had nothing to cheer for so long for most of the season. And they were just pleased with the efforts. They had, I think, one player available in their waffle side, the West Coast Eagles waffle side, who lost by 180 points. And some of the kids, there's Noah Long, kicked a couple of goals. Elijah Hewitt kicks a couple of goals. And that's where they'd be ecstatic, just to see the kids show something and be in a close game.
A couple of questions to emerge from it. Where's it been, given that their most recent performance was a 171-point loss, and there were 4 in total 100-point losses? And as you do that, this is the revving up of the crowd here from Hewitt.
It's a good question you asked, that even though you've got all these injuries, you still expect to put up a fight for a period of time. And what they did yesterday is what you should see more often. That,
I like this.
Yeah, he's got some spunk, the kid, and that you actually are in games for periods, whereas they're often out of the games within 10 minutes of the game, and that's deflating for anyone, and they're in the game for long periods, and that's what should be the benchmark from this point on.
You could feel the relief of Ross Lyon post-match. We'll take a listen and a look now at what he said and line that up with Adam Simpson's comments post-match.
Cuddly Ross is still here. Yeah, I was flat. I just said you've got to dig yourselves out of it. In the end, we'll take the 4 points. Half-time spoke about wasting 9 months of hard work. I think that hit home because we've been pretty good. But I'm still trying to understand the lack of system and how we want to play in the first half to the second. I still can't get my head around it.
The kids, you know, we had 5 18-year-olds, I think, and 4 19-year-olds. So when they played the way they did and showed everyone something, I'm glad everyone turned up before quarter time. I'm disappointed we didn't win. Probably a tale of two halves, really. So, yeah, losing Tim before the game was a challenge. I think we ended up with 23 to choose from for the... So I think we've got 20 injuries at the moment, so it's tough.
I'm pretty keen to put it in the bin. Tony, the ground manager, oh, there he is there, said to me it was a good game to watch, right? So I'm glad Tony's happy. I'm not too... I would have liked it a bit uglier.
Kaylee Ross still in existence, Lloyd. Does he need to get a bit grumpy? I mean, where are they at? They started so well, they've let it fall away. And look, they got the win, but sometimes that's all you need to do.
Yeah, the two coaches there, I think Adam Simpson's relieved. Did he feel good that his side was in a game of football and saw some good signs from the kids? But I like that from Ross. Like, they've won a game of football. He could act like a relieved coach and take the positives out of it. But to have lost to the 18th ranked side when you're 5th on the ladder, that would have been devastating. So he'll treat that like a loss, I would have thought, during the week.
Yep. Tim Kelly was obviously a late withdrawal in that game, but it was Josh Kelly who was the cleanest ball user in his team. GWS's big win over Melbourne yesterday in Alice Springs. This is the first of his 2 goals. Lordo, it was a key one. It helped them surge in that third term, and then we can see the momentous element to this particular kick, the seizing of the pressure, the moment, and then executing the way he did to kick the winning goal.
Oh, he's a beautiful player to watch, Josh Kelly, and there's going to be a day in the next year or two, I think, that he's top 3 in the Brownlow medal, or he goes close to winning one with him at his best. He is back to his best. It's the reason they've won 4 of their last 5. Their only loss, Damo, has been that Marlon Pickett kick at the end of it.
6 points.
So, yeah, well done to Adam Kingsley. I think they believed, even those inside the club were saying they're starting to understand what Adam wants, and it's all starting to come together, which has been proven to be right.
You mentioned the leadership there of Josh Kelly. Toby Green was so important as well, as was Toby Bedford, ex-Demon, who, again, after that second Kelly goal, had this to do on the wing, Lord. I mean, he could have approached this in many different ways. He chose the toughest way.
He'll be picked every week based on this, and he only had 9 touches, but he had 7 tackles, and as I said, Adam Kingsley would have gone straight to him and said, that was unbelievable, Toby, what you did late, and you'll be picked again next week because of efforts like that.
I think there's massive issues at Melbourne now. Lost 4 of their past 6. Bailey Fritsch went down with a foot injury. Ben Brown came back in. The conditions weren't suitable for him, but the forward line is just not functioning. Tom McDonald has been out regularly again. Now, they're still hanging in there for the top 4, but they've got a list of 4 games now upcoming that, if they don't all go their way, they could actually be vulnerable for actual place in the 8.
Yeah, I don't like the way they play, and I've been like a broken record for probably the last 4 or 5 weeks about them. They have no cohesion. They're a side that gives maximum effort, but they just don't generate that into scores. So they had 27 more inside 50s than the Giants yesterday, yet couldn't win the game of football, and that's pretty much the story of their season. Forward's out of form, but it also is the way the ball goes in and the
Is that the bigger problem?
That's what I think. Yeah, it's a bigger problem. Yeah.
Those 4 games I referred to, St Kilda, Brisbane, Adelaide and Richmond. Now, on current form, none of those games are given.
No, I agree, and they've been going at 50% pretty much since round 10 of last year, where they've been that win-loss sort of, so they've been struggling for a while.
Some people have had the view that this team that won the premiership in 2021 was a side that was worthy of winning multiple flags. They're not doing that. They fell away last year, and this season right now is on a knife's edge.
Yeah, I think I don't ever agree. Like, I've been hearing talk of that with this list they should win 3 flags. They're so hard to win, and you have to be in the right place at the right time, and they're a long way off that.
Someone's surging in the way Melbourne did in 2021 as Port Adelaide, and they again did it differently. They required an all-time great, now famous kick after the siren from Dan Houston, who, we talk about composure, 17 seconds remaining when he took that mark, just went back and, again, like Josh Kelly, executed under the pressure.
He never panics, Dan Houston. I thought he was the best player on the ground. He had 32 disposals, but being there live to watch it, he just stopped and said, no, I'm not going to put this on anybody else. I'm going to take the kick. And he knows what he's capable of, and there's probably him and Kane Farrell and a few others that were probably the only ones on the ground capable of it. But I'll remember it for a long time because of the way he put it on his shoulders and said, I'm going to be the man here and I'm going to have a crack at it.
He was best on ground even prior to that moment, I feel. He was a clear best on ground the previous win of the Port Adelaide team against Geelong too. He's put together a fantastic season outside of those 2 games.
Yeah, I was asked to do an All-Australian side here maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he was in my side then, so he's had a brilliant season.
A lot of heroes to emerge from round 16. Have you heard of Simon Plumridge before, Lordo? And if not, that's the man in the green there, the goal umpire, who is as famous as anyone coming out of this round.
He did well, didn't he? Like, that is just courage, and it's also putting yourself in the perfect spot, and he said it was a goal. He went upstairs just to be totally sure, but that is perfection from the goal umpire, Simon Plumridge.
Yep. Now, I would argue it's goal of the year, and I hope it is recognised as such. Is the greatest goal after the siren of all time?
Well, I'm putting it in front of the first 3 before we get to one that's better than it. So I'm putting it in front of this one. This is a tough kick. It's more the distance and the wet ball.
This is Jack Newnes during the COVID year for Carlton.
Yep. So
the degree of difficulty there is huge.
That is,
as it was here for Robbie Gray, again in COVID.
But I've got Houston in front of it because of the distance and the wet ball. But that is magnificent from Robbie.
This was the one prior to Houston's that I thought was the best, Lordo, in the current climate. Jamie Elliott last year also against Essendon. I thought that was the winner, but I reckon Houston's got him covered as well. But I think we're both in agreement, aren't we? We've got to go way back to 1976. You're never, ever going to top this, are you?
No, what about the connection from Malcolm Blight? They cannot kick a ball better than that. That is the best ever. Malcolm, and I'm sure Malcolm agrees with us.
There's someone who thought he'd kicked a match-winning goal was Essendon's Jai Caldwell on the weekend, Lordo, but it wasn't enough. I mean, again, we talked about composure already here. There's a lot of that there with that goal going through to give them the lead against Port. And you can see the background there. The trainer, she's very happy with it. She's put the 4 premiership points away.
Yeah, they were gone. There was a stage there where Pal Pepper was having a shot for goal with 7 minutes to go to put them 23 points up in the wet. And they've got great spirit, the Bombers, and they're having a sensational year. They're sitting in 8th at the moment. They play Adelaide at Marvel on Sunday. Cannot wait for that game because it might be sort of a season-defining game. But Brad Scott's done a fantastic job.
Are you worried slightly, though, about their forward line? Sam Wiggman, no goals in 5 weeks. Peter Wright, no goals in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think in the off-season they're looking for a key back, but also, they've got a lift. Peter Wright will be better for the run after being back for 3 weeks from his shoulder.
You always admire footy clubs that respond to adversity, and Carlton had plenty of that when they lost 6 in a row and 8 of 9. Now, the opposition they've beaten, Gold Coast 2 weeks ago, Hawthorn on the weekend, is questionable, but their method has improved out of sight. Yeah,
it has, Damo, and I think you sort of can look at so many different ways of what's improved, but to me it's the midfield of Carlton. This is brilliant because Mackay and Curnow are nowhere near each other, so they're jumping on top of each other a lot, but Adam Chera has had his best fortnight of his career. He's had a good career, but he's dominating and being best on ground. there he is there, and Patrick Cripps is back to his best, and that makes a huge difference.
And just lay person's terms it for us. What are they doing differently in that past fortnight to what got them into trouble?
Yeah, so they were just bombing the ball on the heads of their forwards. But I think it's because they looked at a pedestrian midfield, they looked slow. Now they're getting the run, the carry, breaking the lines, and it's making it so much easier for the forwards.
Are you worried about Hawthorn?
What won them that game against Brisbane was the run and the link-up and the energy and the carry. I saw none of that yesterday, which was really disappointing.
Gold Coast last week, and then no goals at all in the first half, and their first goal of the game coming in the 5-minute mark of the third quarter, and then no goals again in the last quarter. Or one goal.
Yeah, and they're a very, very young side, but again, you want to see effort early on in the game, and they come off an embarrassing performance via the Gold Coast, but I didn't see any life in Hawthorn in the first quarter when you want to see it.
There's now been 8 matches they've lost by 9 or more goals.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And we had Sam Mitchell on Footy Classified during the week. He was as flat as a tack, and he'd be even flatter after that performance against Hawthorn.
Speaking of flat as a tack, North Melbourne equally, Lloyd, 13 matches now have been lost in a row, and some people may be looking for positives in the first half of what they did against the Crows, but it's senior experienced players like Griffin Logue here making mistakes like that are just sapping all hope.
Yeah, and you want to see the cycle broken. Like, you and I have spoken about that stat that you come up with about Ben Mackay, who has won 7 games in his career. Like, they just don't know how to win. They just, close enough is often good enough. It's their senior players like Zeeble, makes a lot of bad merits. Taron Thomas.
He was okay, Thomas, but he made that mistake there at a key stage.
And then the young kid there, Bergman handballs it over his head. They just, after half-time, they put in a good first half, and then this is Aiden Core. Where's his intensity to get up and find his player and Tex Walker? He just wanders off, doesn't even know where his man is, and Tex, the best kick in the game, puts one down from 50. So, yeah, it is tiring. I can't imagine what it's like for a North supporter seeing what they serve up week after week.
Strange enough, the Crows' best 2 performances are losses in my eyes this year, Lord. Both against Collingwood, round 7 and last week. But they've got a forward line that has done damage outside in those games and outside of those games. Look, the comparisons here. They made a grand final in that 2017 season. There's arguably more dynamic elements to the current crop, arguably.
Yeah, and that might not be a grand final this year, but they may be in one next year or the year after with that forward line. The way Tex is going, he's still got a few years left in him, and there's just a bunch of kids around the 20s around him. So, it's exciting times at Adelaide.
Western Bulldogs and Freo, it was always going to be a grind on Saturday at Marvel Stadium. The Dogs were able to flick the switch early in the last quarter after the Dockers kicked the first 2 goals of that term, and no surprise, the players you see here who were influential in allowing that to happen. This is a good goal here from Rory Lobb, but then we go back to the centre of the ground where the game is ultimately won and lost, and the Bulldogs regulars were there.
And they're now only percentage away from Melbourne for its 4th spot. So they're now in the fight for 4th position, which is huge for the Western Bulldogs. That gives you a chance at winning the flag. But they kicked 7 of the last 8 goals. And Fremantle, their midfield gets hyped, but they were smashed through the midfield late in this game. And well done to Riley West. He was important late in setting up these opportunities. Norton didn't have a great game, but found some touch there, kicking a couple of goals. And look at the pressure here late from the Western Bulldogs. The game was there to be won. One side was there and stepped up. The other side didn't. And look at Justin Longmuir. He'd be shattered with that performance.
It's been a disappointing year for the Dockers, hasn't it? I know they've got their own spin on it, that they're still a young team and then they are progressing, and I get all of that, but they won a final last year and they're probably now not even going to make it this year.
No, I just can't get any momentum going. They haven't got going the whole season.
Yep. Still yet to work out what the biggest storyline it was out of the Collingwood-Gold Coast game. We'll start with the positive element to it and just the blitz that the Collingwood Footy Club gave to the Suns. Look, we're just going to show some passages here. They would spend more energy and effort at a training session than some of these passages of play.
You have to bring maximum effort. Like we saw Melbourne beat Collingwood 3 weeks ago and Adelaide nearly get there. You have to bring maximum effort to beat them because they move the ball better than any other side in the competition. And you see here, there's just not enough effort. There's not enough pressure on the ball carrier.
But these movements are starting on the last line of Collingwood's setup.
But that's often where Collingwood do start a lot of their...
Billy Frampton's looking like Jordan De Goey here, surging through the middle and drilling a goal from 60.
And so Stuart Dew, I'll say he was out-coached. This is a coach in Craig McRae who's at the top of his game, and some of these clips you see...
That's a ruckman taking a stream of possession here. And look and bring it back through the corridor here.
They do, and then look at the chain, and once they're gone...
And they've got options again. Quainer can come back and take this.
And you are gone. If your front lines aren't putting pressure on, this is how it ends up. In the blink of an eye, it goes from one end to the other. Well done to Collingwood, though. They are the best side in the comp to watch.
So good to watch.
The best team in it.
Yeah. So you now add that Collingwood debacle from a Gold Coast Suns perspective and Coach Stuart Dew to the match 2 weeks ago against the Carlton Footy Club. They are horrendous losses in a period of time in which Damian Hardwick is putting his hand up to coach again as early as next year.
Can I ask you, Damo, what do you think is going to happen there? Do you think Dewey will be the coach of the Suns next year?
I don't know how anyone attached to that footy club, Lloyd, and you know me well enough. I'm not one to call for sackings. I'm not. And I've been keen to see how this plays out this year with Stuart Dew and the commitment they've given to him. But with those last two games in isolation, those two losses, if they're not asking the question of themselves about how they look without him and potentially with someone like Hardwick, well, they're not doing their own jobs, are they, as administrators of a footy club that has never once made a statement of any sorts and significance in the AFL.
And you're right, Dave, and it's another year where it looks like they're going to tail off the way they've been the last few weeks, which happens every year. They start well and then finish really poorly.
Brad Closer avoided match review sanction, Lord, for his tackle on Aaron Francis. Are players learning how to do things differently this year? This is Bo McQuarrie on Will Powell. Rather than sling, he just decides to lift.
The players, the AFL would be wrapped with that from Bo McQuarrie because he thought through the situation, didn't dump the player, he held him up and still wins a free kick.
And I'm glad the umpire paid it rather than sort of taking the easy option just to ball it up because he had no attempt to get rid of it. So.
And you'd love to know if Collingwood and where McRae is at as a coach, that they're training for that more so than other clubs potentially.
It was a hard watch on Friday night, the Swans Geelong game, and it'll be particularly hard for John Longmire, the coach, to revisit some of these kicks. I mean, Isaac Heaney's a beautiful player, but these two set shots in the first quarter, I don't know how you hit the point post on both of those on either side of the goals, and then Tom Hickey to miss from 12 metres. I mean, and not just miss, but horrendously miss. He did it again later in the game. We'll see the second of the two he missed. And I know he's not a goal kicker, but you can do better than that. And then the game could still be won late. I mean, Logan McDonald dropping that mark. Again, that was hot, and he nearly made something of it. But Robbie Fox, Lord, is 8.5 metres out from goal here.
John Longmire coached the perfect game. I thought in the first half, the way he coached and he lowered his eyes and they caught out Radaglia and Tom Stewart and all these guys. So he planned beautifully, but you can't plan for that. So they should have won that game of football, and bad kicking hurt them, which it does week after week. And that's the thing that supporters ask me, why doesn't this still improve, which it still hasn't after all these years.
Yep. The crypto brave play of round 16 came from that game. Gary Rowan of the Cats, who decided to take on 3 Swans in this one passage of play and came out clearly on top.
And you pick him up here. He's ran 150 metres just to put on some pressure. And I've questioned Gary a lot over my time, but Geelong people just say this is why he gets picked and he's always on the magnet board. It's not about dispose for Gary Rowan. It's because of the efforts like that gets him picked everywhere, a bit like Toby Bedford earlier.
Yep. Brisbane Lions have allowed Collingwood and Port Adelaide to get 2 games clear of them, but they're, in their own way, doing everything right, aren't they? They smashed Richmond, which gave itself a chance in this game.
When they are in this mood, they are as good as any side in the competition. They're not as consistent as Collingwood, but at their best, it's now a fight. Obviously, they're 2 games off Port Adelaide, so they probably, at this stage, will have to go to the Adelaide Oval in their first week of the finals. But if there's a slip-up and they can catch Port Adelaide or Collingwood, you wouldn't want to play the Brisbane Lions at the Gabba in a final where they just do not lose. Yeah.
Now, on Mondays, Lordo, on Access earlier, as we go early with our tips as part of the official AFL tipping competition brought to us by Crypto.com. I'm a terrible tipster, you know that, but I'm going to go to you. Essendon, Adelaide at Marvel Stadium.
Being at Marvel, I'll go the Bombers at that one.
Yeah, and Richmond taking on the Swans at the G.
Both aren't in the best form, but I'll take the Tigers in that game,
And importantly, kids get to go free. It's part of what's been happening at the footy in recent weeks. It's got a few weeks to run, 3 more weeks. Children aged 14 and under, free entry to all games. There'll be heaps of entertainment and giveaways. Find out more, head to afl.com.au. Kids Month. Lordo, thanks as always for your time on Access All Areas, and we'll be back next Monday with another edition of Access All Areas. Goodbye.